Victor.
Steve Q, what's happening? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can just
All right,
see
you're about to see me.
I can see a static picture.
All right, you're about to see me and you're going to regret it. There
Hey,
you go. Get some volume here. There you go.
how are you, man?
I'm doing good, man. How are you doing?
Yeah, all good. Let me just try and turn this volume up here for 1 second.
No worries, my friend. No worries. Let me grab a seat here. Oh.
So we got 55 minutes, yeah?
That is correct, my friend.
Okay, well, you know what they say, without further ado, should we go?
Do it.
We can have a chit chat some other time. Hi there, everybody, and welcome to today's edition of the Q Cast with me, Steve Q. And today I have a guest on the Q Cast who I've been after for a while to come on. He's a guy who I've been following, who's inspired to me. You know, I listen to him on YouTube when I'm driving around, watch his videos. He's had 25 years or so at the coal face. So he's a very experienced, experiential guy who can walk his talk in high ticket professional B2B sales. He's done millions in sales, earned millions in commission. He's one of the world's most in-demand sales and inspirational trainers and speakers. And he's been, I just found out recently, researching, Victor's done some huge stages. He's been with Grant Cardone at the 10X Growth Conference even. And he was a host of the reality TV series Life or Debt. So he is the man who finds the why in how people buy. He is Victor Antonio. Welcome, Victor. Thanks for joining me.
Steve Q, you have done your research, man. You are awesome. And I do appreciate your tenacity and persistence. You are a true sales guy. So I appreciate being here. Thank you.
It's got to be. I've got a funny feeling, you know, Victor, that we're cut from a similar cloth, as they say.
We're about to find out, aren't we?
Yeah, I think so. You know what? I was watching the other day, which was very, very touching. I was watching this tribute that you did, and this is probably as good a place as any to start. I was watching this tribute you did to Zig Ziglar. Tell me about that, please. It was really cool, by the way, and I love the photo of you and him at the end. But just because Zig Ziglar was someone who influenced me massively. If I didn't listen to Zig Ziglar at one point in my, you know, when we had cassettes, if I didn't listen to him for at least 2 hours a day, I thought the game was over. You know, I was so influenced by this guy. Tell me about meeting him and all, and the influence he had on you, please.
You know, I mean, you are the first person to actually bring up that video, that tribute video, because I've never done a tribute video for anybody. And so when I found out about Zig Ziglar's death, I was like, I was totally impacted. You know, it's one of those things that really hit me. And so I did that small video. And so I saw Ziglar back in, I think it's 93, 95. Our company used to give us these tickets to go see these performance development people. And I remember watching him on stage going, look at this guy, the way he moves, the way he talks, the way he moved an audience. And it was like, at that moment, I go, that's what I want to do. And it was then that I joined Toastmasters to learn how to speak. And it was kind of something I built on the side. Fast forward, leave corporate America, and I'll give you the fast version. I get invited to speak on a platform where he's speaking, right? But I should step back. A month before that, I had gone to one of those events. I forgot what they were called. There was something, but big motivational events, right? And I remember I told the lady, I said, can I meet Zig Ziglar? She's like, no, he doesn't really like to meet with you. I said, you don't understand. I did a documentary. It's online. It's free. It's called The Motivator. And I talk about Zig Ziglar. It's like, I'm like a real fan. He goes, nah, I don't think he'll want to meet with you. And I don't think that's possible. And I remember I went, it was lunchtime. I was enjoying the speakers. Zig Ziglar had not come on yet. I went across the street to a hotel, Steve, and I get a call on my phone and the lady says, Zig Ziglar will meet with you. I'm like, oh. And I remember I just ran, I mean, like a madman through the hotel, crossing the street, probably almost got hit by a car, who cares? Get to where she's at. She's walking me to the door, and she's looking at me, and I'm sweating and panting, so to speak. She goes, before we go in, she's like, you need to compose yourself. So I did. And then I remember I walked in finally, and there he was. And I just started blathering. And after, I don't know how many couple of minutes of blathering, he just says, well, you know who I am. Who are you? Because I never even introduced myself. I just went into blathering mode, right? It's like when you meet somebody. And then this happened. I don't know if I put this in the video, but I remember somewhere in the middle of the conversation, I just stopped. And I just said, can I just hug you? And he was like, sure. And he let me hug him, right? And then he said this magical phrase, this line that I'll never forget. She goes, my wife Red's a hugger too. And I'm like, oh, he's gonna let me hug his wife too. This is amazing. And then they took a picture of us after that. But you know how they always say you should never meet your idols because they'll disappoint you? The man did not disappoint, exceeded expectation. Fast forward, last part, a month later, I get a chance to speak on the same stage as him, right? And I remember after I was done, you go out the back door, so to speak, of the stadium, and they take you straight to the hotel. And I remember getting to the hotel lobby after doing my speech, and Zig Ziglar and his wife came over, and he's like, all right, Victor, how'd it go? You know, and I'm like, I'm having an out-of-body moment because I'm like, I'm trying to explain what happened, but I'm also trying to go, he's actually asking me. Zig Ziglar is asking me how it went. And so it was a great experience. And the man was a true gentleman, which is probably why I did that tribute video.
He was unbelievable. I love what he said about her. I remember him saying, my wife is what we call a decided redhead, meaning that one day she just woke up one day and decided she was going to become a redhead. He was amazing, and like you said in the film, such grace, he was just like a pro at he just epitomized the word professional, motivational speaker like nobody else ever has done or will do, for me personally. You know,
I think
there's only one Zig Ziglar.
Yeah, there'll never be another one. I think that, you know, the word authenticity would be the big one word I'd give him. Purely authentic. And I love that about him.
Yeah. I know that saying about meeting your idols. I met and proceeded to get very drunk once with Ian Gillan from Deep Purple. And you know, the first rock song I ever heard when I was 12 or 13 was Smoke on the Water by Purple, yeah? And then in 2006, I end up in a bar in the south of France with him after one of their shows and spent 3 hours with him. And he was just the nicest, coolest, and we had big hugs, and he was great. So it doesn't I think that's a cynical phrase, don't meet your idols, because you know what? People are people, and some people are cool, some people are not so cool, you know?
It's a roll of the dice. It's a roll of the dice. I found that, you know, as you move up the corporate ladder, I'm talking about businesses in general, I've realized that people who are at the top of their game, the apex of their business, whether it's a VP, senior VP, a C-suite level person, they're usually the nicest people. Somewhere along the way, they've shed this insecurity / ego. I found that to be, 80-20 rule. 80% of the time, they're just great people.
Yeah. I had a very similar, the way you say you missed, there was, let's call him the English Zig Ziglar. He was a guy called Richard Denny, who's a very, very well-known sales trainer and old school guy, yeah?
Right.
Inspirational speaker. He wrote a great book called Selling to Win. In fact, somebody I podcasted with a few weeks ago, I mentioned, it came up in conversation, and he said, just a second, and he picked the book up. He said, I still read it to this day. But I had Richard as a mentor, and it was the same thing. He just had this warmth and grace, and I go and meet with him, once every month, 6 weeks, and we didn't talk about we used to sit down and he'd go, right, my boy, tell me what's happening in your life. And the guy just had such an infectious energy and enthusiasm. I'd come away, 90 minutes is about right, and I'd come away feeling like I could walk through a wall. You know that feeling, just on fire with the desire to go and do something, So what got you into sales, Victor?
I started out as an engineer. So my background is I have an electrical engineering degree. And so the motivation to be an engineer was money. We were poor. Family's originally from Puerto Rico.
You have an MBA as well, eh?
And an MBA as well. And so, you know, the family's poor. So I was like, let me get a job that makes money. And I remember asking my physics teacher, hey, what makes a lot of money? He goes, engineers, Victor. And I remember seeing different list of engineers in this bingo card. You know how you submit those cards to the university to get the actual package? And I remember civil engineer, I said, well, I don't know what that means. I don't want to be nice to people. Mechanical engineer, don't want to fix cars. Aerospace engineer, Puerto Rican in outer space, not feeling that. Electrical engineer, electricity, I get that, I understand that. And that's how I actually decided to be an electrical engineer. Go to school, graduate. 3 years into my gig, I'm like, I don't like doing this. Making money, but I don't like doing this. And then I started kind of looking around for something else to do. And that began, I call the journey of like reading, experimenting, and trying different things. And I landed in a sales engineer position where we would do four-legged calls. You know, that means the salesperson to me, 4 legs. We would do the calls. He would do the sales. I would do the actual engineering part. Any technical questions, I do. Any sales questions, he did or she did. And I remember we closed. I've told the story because it's so true. I was working with a guy. His name was Ken. Ken and I working on this deal. We closed a $5 million deal. $5 million, man. And we closed this. My first big, I was doing telecom systems. My first big system sold. My design, super happy. Ken says, hey, Victor, we won the deal, $5 million. Yeah, you know, he says, I'm taking you out to lunch. I'm like, oh, sales engineer go, oh man, he's taking me out to lunch. And so I remember he comes to the office. Let's go, Victor. We leave about 11:30. Take off to lunch. We don't get back to like 2. I remember he says, where do you want to go? I said, let's go to a steakhouse because I'm about to spend your money, so to speak. And I remember we went, had a big steak, nice beer, which is kind of like taboo here in America, but you know, over there it's probably not a big deal. And so I remember coming back, I'm all happy, right, Steve? I'm all happy, super happy, come back. I'm floating in the office, like big steak in my belly with some beer. I'm happy as can be. Then there's always that one guy in your office, that one guy who's going to just ruin your day. And his name is Roy. And Roy said, Victor, what are you so happy about? I said, man, Ken, we just won this $5 million deal. Took me out to lunch. I'm happy, $50 steak in my belly with some beer. And he says, Victor, let me ask you a question. To which I always tell people, when somebody says, let me ask you a question, I can almost guarantee you it's not going to go your way. So he says, let me ask you a question. I said, what? He says, how big was the deal? $5 million. I said, okay, so he took you out to steak. How much do you think he spent on you? I said, at least $50. I know he spent $50, at least, right? And he says, Vic, let me ask you one question, final question. I said, what? I said, how big do you think his commission check is going to be on your system that you developed? And I was like, I don't know. I mean, how much? I didn't think about it. He says, probably around, I don't know, 50,000 on the first phase. Hope you enjoyed your steak. Walks away. And at that moment, I'm like, I'm in the wrong business. And so then what happened after that, some time passed, and they needed somebody to actually do sales in Latin America. And since I spoke Spanish, knew the product, was an engineer, you're the perfect fit. Let's do this.
Esto muy bien, eh?
I see it.
I lived in Marbella, Malaga, yeah, in the south of Spain for about 6 years. Yeah, I can. Una más cerveza grande, por favor.
Yeah.
Very important phrase.
I got a friend who lives in
fluent
Malaga.
in Spanish though, so I'm fluent in French because I lived there before Spain as well. Yeah, yeah.
Wonderful.
So what, Victor? What are the key motivators that get Victor Antonio out of bed, up and at it nowadays?
Right. Well, when I was in, I did a lot of sales. I did all the grunt work. It was great to start as a sales engineer. It was then great to develop systems. It was then great to sell it. And then it was great to manage people. So my progression was basically from sales engineer to president of sales and marketing for a $420 million company. And in that transition, you learn a lot about what it takes to be in sales. And the big question I always get is, Victor, if you're putting a team together, what are you looking for? What do you look for?
Yeah.
And you know as well as I do, Steve, sometimes people are like boxes of chocolates, if I can use that Forrest Gump line. You never know what you're going to get, right? Until you put them out in the field. But what I always tell people, what I think drives a great salesperson, especially if you're doing the interview process, is the questions they ask, right? And you're also looking for, what we often take for granted is articulation, the ability to really speak and communicate an idea. So one of the things I used to always do is when somebody was coming in and wants to be a salesperson, I said, why don't you take 5 minutes, go sit outside the office, think of a 5 or 10 minute presentation, don't even care what you want to talk about. come back in here and just tell me what the presentation is. Just walk me through whatever. It's how you bought your car, how you met your wife. I don't even care. Just give me a presentation and sell me on something, an idea. And there you can really tell who the best of the best are, because that's what the customer sees. I think we don't think about this enough, is that we spend all this money building our companies, investing in operations, manufacturing, all that, marketing, GSA, all that stuff. And then what the customer sees is the salesperson. That's your representative. That's your avatar in the market. Yeah. And I think too often our avatar isn't representing who we really are as a brand. So I'd say that's the biggest thing. The second thing to look for is activity. You can monitor a salesperson's activity, whether it's through a CRM or some engagement platform, to see what type of activities they're engaged in on a daily basis, see if they're actually executing on what you want them to do. So that would be the 1-2.
That's cool. I did hear you say something very similar to the first part of that answer one time when you were talking, and it's almost like verbatim what I say to people as well. Number one, companies often, like at corporate level, you know, they forget who brings home the bacon. Mm-hmm. Yeah, who puts the money in the bank. And also, yeah, you're bang on. You know, I fill out a lot of forms online, yeah, because I'm a sales trainer here. I'm always looking for people to speak to, companies to say, hey, you know, maybe you want a bit of help. And you know, people are representing big companies and they come on the phone to you. And I use another name when I fill these forms out, yeah, and like a prepaid phone number, I fill it in. And when that phone rings, I know it's a secret squirrel call, yeah? Okay. And like just the fundamental mistakes that people make. And like you say, you've spent all that money on the product, on the R&D, on a whole host of things. And you put somebody who's basically got a pulse and can just about sign his own name to represent you.
It makes no sense. I think sales, I mean, this is my battle cry, is that, you know, sales is a noble profession. Yeah. That's my battle cry. And surrounding that, I always say salespeople are like walking profit centers, profit and loss centers. They cost the company some money, and they better generate more money than they actually cost. And there better be a multiple of that, if you know what I mean. And I think when you look at selling, you know, the sales department is the only P&L. Everybody else is a cost center. I'm sorry, but they are. One could argue marketing maybe isn't a cost center anymore, but everybody else is a cost center, which means that if you're a salesperson, that, you know, one of my most popular videos on YouTube is called Sales Excellence, How to Become a Great Salesperson. And in there, I talk about how salespeople complain like they don't get the training from their company, which is why they don't sell. To which I say, shut up, because there's enough content online that you can teach yourself anything you need to know. Absolutely. You should be responsible for your own development. By the way, if the company gives you development, bonus, you know what I mean? That's going to keep you probably there longer because they really have a plan out for you or plan for you. And so when I look at the profession of selling, the reason I love it so much is because it is the fuel that drives any company. Without sales, you're screwed. And, you know, there's all these negative connotations, disparaging remarks about selling. I get it. I know where they come from. But in the end, everybody has to sell. And we all know this basic statement. But I think we're trying to elevate this professional level to, you know, I guess a level where people say, we need these people. We need to respect what they do. It isn't until you do sales. It isn't until you do sales that you realize how hard it is. And if I could just tell you one quick story, because I just came across this interview that was done 2 years ago. Rob Moore is a guy on that side of the pond, the disruptive entrepreneur. Yeah. And he interviewed Jordan Peterson, the guy who wrote the 12 Rules of Life. And in there, they just kind of went on a totally different track because, you know, Jordan usually talks about politics or culture or things of that nature. But what he talked about is how he was trying to sell his software product that actually helps HR people hire more effectively. And he was commenting how hard it was to sell and how respectful we should be of the profession of selling, because he suffered the slings and arrows of long sales cycles that turn up 0 deals. And I really enjoyed his conversation because he went from not thinking about sales to thinking about sales and realizing that it is the cornerstone of building any business.
Yeah, yeah. It's so funny that you say that, because I was just messaging with Rob Moore earlier today, literally 2-3 hours ago. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'm trying to get him on the on a podcast like this one. I'll put on my podcast if you'll allow me this interview. And so
Yes,
it was a
please.
very interesting. He's a very interesting guy, and I think I'd like to talk to him. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm fixing up to do one with him, one with Jordan Belfort. Yeah, probably. And
I'm like, we are the same. We're thinking along the same tracks, actually.
Yeah,
he was going to be
yeah. Try this one on for size then. This is not in my notes, but just what we were talking about. So I got a call about 4 or 5 years ago. I'm living down in Spain from a company selling software, yeah? And they'd had it really good for a long time. And then something to do with government legislation meant that the whole marketplace was going to open up. And they're no longer going to have this monopoly, virtual monopoly that they'd have. And they explained to me that they'd set up a sales team, but it wasn't going that well, and it was all done on the phone, this, yeah? So when I got there, I said, okay, so talk me through the backgrounds of the salespeople. Were they in other selling jobs before, or did you have another sales department? They said, oh, no, we took a couple from accounts, we took one from marketing, we took 2 from admin, and they've just basically taken them from this other department, put them, and now your salespeople, given them a script. I said, have you given them a book to read on selling, like Selling to Win or a Zig Ziglar book? No, who are those guys? Have you directed them to any sort of training course or YouTube material on selling? No. So, and you're wondering why they're afraid and reluctant to pick up the phone, and when they do, they're not getting any kind of a result. And they said, yeah, I can see your point now, Steve. Yeah, I mean, what's your do you come across stuff like that?
No, I used to come across stuff like that in like Latin America, years ago. I think when you look at here in the U.S., and it may sound like an egocentric statement, but when it comes to sales and marketing, we're pretty advanced over here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We're pretty advanced over here. In Latin America, they were lagging a little bit. And I remember they didn't know, much about sales training. They really didn't think investing in that made any sense, and they were always like, how can you prove it works? And the statement back was, how can you prove it doesn't work? I mean, if you never tried it, you know what I mean? And so I don't run across that here in the US. Everybody's pretty well trained here in the US. I mean, like I said, we're getting to a point now because of these new software products, these engagement and enablement platforms, that we're seeing a new breed, in my opinion, of salespeople. And we're always going to have, Steve, first principles that we have to learn in selling, right? Which is the ability to communicate and present. Can't get away from that no matter what technology you have, right? You just can't get away from it. But now we're seeing this fusion of man or woman and machine. And that is this fusion that's happening. And I think this is what's fascinating. To me, this is what's exciting, what's happening now in the market. You're seeing these sales enablement platforms from a marketing side, these sales engagement platforms from a sales side, sales enablement from a marketing side, the CRMs, these things are all being fused together. And these are new salespeople that are going to evolve from that have to be able to communicate, articulate, but also use the data in these machines to be able to sell. That's where I think the market is here in the US. And I know now that people are lagging on that. Training aside, I think that's where people need to be if they want to start thinking about being in sales in the future.
Yeah. I mean, these stuff like you're talking about, HubSpot, Pipedrive, Infusionsoft, it does half the job for you, doesn't it? In weeding people out and hopefully putting the people it puts in front of you for the pitch, or for the close or the presentation, they're going to be at their peak state in terms of making a decision to take action one way or the other by the time they get to you because of the workflows in these systems. So it is exciting. I was curious to know or to learn from you, what do you think of the difference between the salesperson of yesterday, and by yesterday I mean maybe the 80s, early 90s, to the salesperson of today? When you take the technology out, let's just look at the human beings.
Right. I think it's interesting.
What's the difference?
Before I answer the question, I just got this piece of data I have to give you that's just stuck in my head, and I think it's valuable. Is that, I wrote a book called Sales Ex Machina, which is how artificial intelligence is changing the world of selling. And, during that process, I interviewed the CEO from something called a company called People.ai. And in the conversation, he said something that just blew my mind, Steve. He said, this is about, hiring the right people. He asked me, Victor, I asked him, how long does it take for you to determine if somebody's going to work out or not? He turned around and says, well, how long do you think it'll take? Old school, right? I said, I don't know. I say 90 days, right? 30 days for training, 30 days for assessment and correction, 30 days to see if we can see a result, right? That's kind of my mindset. And he says, well, I can tell within 17 days if somebody's going to work out. And I can do that with, I think it was like a 97 or 98% accuracy rate. And I was like, the data, the activities that they're monitoring can tell you whether somebody's going to succeed or not. All right. And I just wanted to share that with you because
that's cool.
When I heard that, I was like, that is like, are you kidding me? 17 days, you'll know. It's almost like, remember, AI is all about prediction. So it's predicting who's going to fail, who's going to succeed. So now but if we take a step back, I always explain sales as there's always going to be two major phases: pre-internet, post-internet sales. Pre-internet, you, the salesperson, had all the information. You really had a lot of the power, right? You understood the market better because that was your business. You understood pricing better and competitors because that was your business. The average consumer or business didn't really understand the landscape because they didn't have, you had to work to find that information before the internet. So people were willing to spend more time with the salesperson to build that relationship and then buy into you, so to speak, right? Now, fast forward, we have the internet. We all know now that clients basically go on their own client journey to look for information. Depending on whose study you believe, the numbers aren't important. The fact is that there are more decision makers now than ever. Customers go on their own journey. Sometimes they're 70, 80, maybe even 90% into buying a product before they even reach out and call a vendor. And again, numbers don't matter. The fact that they're doing it on their own is important, which is why I think the rise of marketing is important. Because in that customer journey, marketing has to be responsible for putting out content that helps them find their way, the breadcrumbs to find their way through a website, to pick up the phone and call. And so this whole thing about in selling, that whole ABC boiler room, Glenn Gary, Glenn Ross, Arthur Miller, death of a salesman type of approach doesn't work because you have an informed buyer now. And so you can't do that. So we can nudge, but we can't push, as I always say. You can nudge, but you can't push. And so now the buyer's in control. Now, does that mean that the salesperson is not relevant anymore? Absolutely not. I take you to this example. I use it all the time. Robert Cialdini, Dr. Robert Cialdini, who wrote the book Influence. In there, he had a great study. I think it was, I forgot who did the study. It wasn't him. He just reported the study. They did some jams, jellies, the jam display. I don't know if you remember that. One table, day one, they had, I think, 24 flavors of jams. And on day two, they had only 6 flavors. And they wanted to see how many people would approach the table and actually buy. We know the results. With 24 flavors, only 3% bought. With 6 flavors, 30% bought, right? Too many options, a confused mind will never make a decision. 24 is just too much. And people suffer from buyer's regret, not remorse, regret, which is like, I'd rather not make a decision than make a decision and be wrong. So let me just think about it, right? And so now fast forward to what's happening today. No, in fact, let's go back 5 years. 5 years ago, the sales, the cognoscenti, the smart people out there were saying, look, what you have to do is you have to provide your customer with insight. That's information beyond the obvious. Give them something they don't know. Provocative selling, all this stuff, the challenger sale, blah, blah, blah. That's how you position it, right? And so here in the US, everybody went to work on creating insight, information beyond the obvious, information that is compelling, information that you go, oh, wow, this is what I was looking for. Now, fast forward to today. The content out there is so high quality. It's so high quality that the word insight has become, is a parody word now. Everything's at parody now, right? So that doesn't exist. So what's left? Who's the ultimate differentiator then? The salesperson. Customers looking at 24 pieces, 24 jams. In our case, 24 pieces of information. They need to reconcile this. They need to figure out what's right, what's wrong. So they're calling the salesperson for either clarification or confirmation. And you as a salesperson better know your stuff. So you are the salesperson now, to me, is the ultimate differentiator.
Cool, cool. I love the ABC reference.
Yeah.
Put the coffee down, Victor.
I drove a BMW. What'd you drive? A Hyundai? Something like that.
Yeah. I love it where he said like, F you, that's my name, pal.
Yeah.
There's a great parody that Alec did on SNL where he's like an elf. Have you seen it?
I've not.
So he's an elf, and there's elves making all the stuff for Christmas for Santa, and he comes on and he's something like, put that whatever down, and he totally rips the pee out of himself from the, it's worth watching. I'll send it to you. It's so
Send me the link. Cool.
he really does send himself up, you know, he's great. So what would you say, because you're from predominantly a B2B sales background, high ticket B2B. I mean, if $5 million isn't high ticket, I don't know what is. Right. What would you say is or would you say it's possible? I got another question around that, but I want to ask you this one first. Is it possible, do you think, for somebody to really successfully transition either from B2B or B2C and really sort of get traction the way they were if they were successful in the former?
Right. I think it's easier to go from B2B to B2C than to go from B2C to B2B.
I agree.
And I think it's mindset, right? In the B2B, one could almost look at that as we're selling to multiple people. So almost like as a sequence of B2C events equals a B2B. There's one way of looking at it, right? One paradigm. But remember, in B2B, you do have kind of a consumer, and that is each stakeholder within the company who has to make a buying decision. You need to sell these people. Sometimes you're selling one-to-one. I go visit purchasing. I go visit the CTO. I'm selling kind of a B2C, the idea. Now, the other way is harder, B2C to B2B, because now people who typically sell B2C have learned how to use influence and persuasion and charisma to really sell the product, right? Emphasize some differentials, that's fine. But when you move into B2B, now you're dealing with an organization that has a cross matrix of people involved in the decision, different people, different stakeholders, different functionalities, different motivations, and different timing, urgencies. So now it becomes truly a complex sale. So I think that route is harder. Not impossible, but harder.
And also, what you said there, it's the time thing as well. I remember, gosh, I was about 21 and I was knocking on doors selling B2C, selling life insurance, pension plans, and I was just not, you can imagine the two words that I heard the most, yeah? Mm-hmm. They won't come in.
Yeah, no, they were probably F and O. By the way, F and O come to mind right away.
Yeah. So, but I did pretty good at that, you know. This is like in the 80s, and I'm making like north of £7,000 or £8,000 a month. Yeah, doing that. It was hard work. Then I come across like a corporate deal for a guy with a bunch of care homes. There's a big loan involved. There's key man insurance, and I'm going to make like 25 grand in one hit. And I got what we call big case-itis because I took my eye off the ball on the bread and butter stuff. Yeah, right. It was, and I thought this one's going to be done in a month, and I'm going to find my next businessman to deal with. Took about 11 months for that deal to come through, and I went broke in the meantime. So by the time it came through, I was paying off everything I'd not paid off in the previous 11 months. So it takes longer, doesn't it? You're not going into the home and closing them on a set of pots and pans or a life policy.
Yeah, typically they're going to say, I think about it, and they really mean we need to think about it. They don't say, I need to think about it. We need to think about it. And then as your point, I mean, it's a great point you bring up, because when you look at sales cycles, they're so much different, right? You know, some as you put 11 months, some go out to 18 months. If you're dealing with government, it could go out a little more. And so sometimes, you know, you're putting all your eggs in that basket and you're waiting for that big paycheck, and it's a big binary, 1 or 0, typically. And so I love your point you bring it up. I didn't even think about that, but yeah, that would be another factor that you'd have to have the resiliency and the courage to kind of play the long game here.
And you've got to be a real, I guess, you've got to be a real chameleon, because, and maybe like almost a born natural when it comes to like NLP style skills. Because as you said, you're dealing with a multiple of personalities. So you've got to quickly decipher, if you're dealing with 5 or 6 people, you've got to decipher what type he is, what type she is, and play to those
Correct.
strengths and weaknesses. Yeah.
Great point. Because typically when you're doing B2C, it's either one or two people. Now you can have 5 to 10 people on a committee that you have to deal with. And as I always say, you got to make sure you have mental candy for everybody. Mental candy means something of interest for everybody. And you really have to really think through this stuff. It's not easy just to, like I said, walk in and be suave and smooth and say cute things. And again, the scripts are very complicated in a complex situation because you never know how it's coming at you. And we also know that as the number of people increases within the buying group, the probability of closing actually goes down. I think the cliff begins at 3, where it just starts going down right away.
Yeah. What do you think the classic mistakes are that people make nowadays in B2B sales?
Oh, it's a tough question to answer. I still think articulating the value. I hate it sounds so vague, and but it is. It's really, how does this fit? But if you were to push me harder, I would say, for me personally, my pet peeve is this: you can tell me about your product all day long, feature, benefit, functionality, advantage, you gain. I got it. But what salespeople fail to do is tie that back to what I call the value trinity, which is increase revenue, reduce costs, or expand market share. The only thing a B2B executive cares about: how can you increase my revenue, reduce my costs, or expand my market share? That's the value trinity. And if your presentation doesn't tie back to 1, 2, or all 3 of those, then you're not really positioning. Because I just want to know, how is this going to help me grow revenue? So what's the if you look at the CEO, he's thinking, hey, how's this going to help me expand market share? That's his motivation, right? Operations, how's this going to improve my efficiency and reduce costs? Got it. Sales guys say, wait, if we put this software in, how's that going to help me increase sales and optimize my performance? If you can't tie it and quantify it, then I think you're at a disadvantage.
Yeah. That's a great answer. And like you say, you don't have this. I mean, somebody once said to me, you don't pay very much attention to the product, but you sell really by force of personality, by using charisma. I'm a very observant person, so I pick up on things. And I'm able to bring those things back into play later on. Yeah, I guess you lose a lot of that advantage when you're dealing with a group of people as well. Yeah.
It like diffuses. You have to diffuse it because you got to be careful, as you've rightly pointed out. You got multiple personalities in there, right? So you got somebody who's very sociable, somebody who's very amiable. There's the analytical person, and then there's dominant behavior. Well, you can't serve all 4.
No.
And you have to find, it's almost like an airplane taking off. You hit turbulence, that means you're not at the right altitude. So either you have to go up higher or lower. And it is the salesperson that knows how to find that stream that meets all 4 criteria, and you're flying right in the pocket, that you're not causing a lot of turbulence. Because I've seen some people come in, hot and heavy. Here's what you need to do. And people are like, what do you mean? Here's what I need to do. Or some people come in too timid, like, well, we have some options. And then a couple of questions in, they're like, oh, they freak out. So it's, how do you find that right level? And as you pointed out, that's the best salesperson, right? That can adapt and adjust to the personalities in the room. But I still say it's finding that non-turbulent jet stream, man.
It's having that confidence as well, when you go in and you say, well, we're going to suggest, and then you see 2 of them sit there like, and the arms fold, and they're like, oh yeah, really?
Yeah, I get that all the time. So this is a side thing I do. This is just the tip for you. You might want to use it. So I always get people, and this works like a champ, because I figured out I have a program called Blocking Objections. It's all about reducing mental resistance before they raise the objection. You don't let them raise it. You block it before they raise it. And so every time I would do a keynote pre-pandemic, right? I always have those guys, Steve, those guys that just sit back. Yeah, what are you going to tell me? I've been in the sales for 45 years. Victor, you can't tell me a damn thing. Those people, you can just see them in the audience, right?
100%.
And so, so one of the things I do, and I do it very consistently, is if I know I got a group of salespeople, and I always ask, who's in the audience? Look, Victor, we got people who've been here 2 years. People who've been here 200 years. Take your pick. You got everything in between. I said, I got it. And so this strategy I came up with, blocking mental objection, is I walk up and say hi to everybody. And I kind of say, here's what we're going to talk about. I said, but before I get started, I said, out of curiosity, I just say, raise your hand if you've been in sales for 2 years, at least 2 years. All hands. I said, leave them all up. Leave them all up. Let's leave them all. Then I go 10, 15, 20. Once I get to 20, I say, all right, now we're going into deep water. This is where the professional sharks swim. And you know, the old timers are proud, right? Rah, that's me. I've had a guy that was in there 54 years in sales.
Wow.
That was the oldest I've ever gotten. And then obviously I congratulate them all for being in sales so long, right? I acknowledged their experience. I said, now, many of you have been in sales 2 years, some of you have been in sales 54 years. And I get that. You probably heard it all, seen it all. But if I can show you one or two things to help you increase your sales, would you at least be open to it? They always go, they just do this. Yes, they'll nod their head and you can feel the resistance go down. They just want to be acknowledged with their expertise. And now they say, all right. They're like, go ahead. And I think, see, that's true salesmanship. When you know how to do that consciously, how to reduce that resistance in a room, that's true. I think that's a level of mastery where people can achieve that type of result, where they get easier sales.
Let me ask you, I'm writing I've just about written it actually, a book, and I've called it The Spiritual Seller, because I'm very into metaphysics. Yeah, I studied with Bob Proctor. I actually worked for Bob Proctor for a while. Yeah. And so I'm really into this whole metaphysics thing. And one of the things that we talk about is intention and transference of feeling. Yeah. And this is particularly relevant when you're speaking on the phone to somebody. I know somebody said, well, how does it work on the phone, transferring a feeling? I said, have you ever rung somebody all enthusiastic and they go, yeah? You know, the kind of guy that makes hello sound like a threat. Yeah.
Right. Yep.
You know, and so what sort of feeling do you get in your gut? It tightens up, you feel tense, now you're not going to pitch as well, yeah? So if you can reverse that and make people feel good because of your intention. So where's Victor Antonio on sort of the metaphysical or spiritual side of selling, yeah?
I like to use the word empathy, like pure empathy, not sympathy. Like, I know what you're going through. Empathy is, I live it. I understand I feel that. And because I feel that pain with you, like really feel it, it comes out naturally. It was Zig Ziglar, coincidentally enough, who was the one that really highlighted to me that the voice is probably the most effective sales tool you have. And I remember he said something, he gave this example. He said, because he's talking, and he does velocity, speak fast. When you want to communicate something, drive energy, slow down, pause.
Yeah.
When you just want to drop something serious, something like that, right?
He was the
and I remember
he
says, I can take a phrase and give it many meanings. And so he has this phrase, says, I did not shoot that dog. He said, that right there, number one, is a statement of fact. Number two, I did not shoot that dog. That right there is a denial. I did not shoot that dog. That is a rejection of the fact, right? And he starts to, I did not shoot the dog, threw a brick at it, but I didn't shoot the dog. And basically what he's saying is, by emphasizing different words, he was highlighting that you really can control what's perceived, whether by visual or phone, what you're trying to communicate. And velocity, energy, slow it down, empathy and sympathy, right? Pause, reflective, right? And then how you hit the different words really highlight what the person takes away, and so I live in that world where I can empathize and but I don't do it from when I sell a product or service, my perspective is this. Well, let me ask you a question. Steve, should you love what you sell? Yes or no? Should you love what you sell?
Absolutely.
Absolutely not is the answer. I'm gonna prove to you why. Biggest fallacy in sales. Here's why. Because when you say, I love what I sell, that's egocentric, that's narcissistic, that's what you think about the product. Here's what you should love. You should love what it does for your client. Now, if you happen to love the product at the same time, well, that's cool too, that's a win-win. But if you love what it does for your clients, because people say, well, I need to find a product I love. So no, you need to find the product your customers love that helps them grow their business. And so if I have a product, here's where I'm going with this. If I had a product that I love what it does for my customers, because I know it can help you, then I don't even have to sell. I'm just sharing at this point. I'm not even selling. I'm just sharing. Look, you need to look at this. This can help you. And that's a different shift in selling. So that's my metaphysical approach to selling. It's like, I got to love what it does for you And then my intent is that I just want to help you.
Yeah, and I suppose that way your mouth is congruent with your heart, with your gut.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well said. Well said. Exceptionally well said.
I love. Did you used to watch, listen to Jim Rohn at all? Yeah.
Ah, by the way, second to Zig Ziglar is Jim Rohn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love what he said one time. He said, "I'm going to share some ideas and philosophies with you." He said, "Don't ask if he's right. Ask if he is sincere."
Right.
I love that.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Yeah.
Because it's the
I love that.
sincerity that people buy. That's the real, that's the authenticity, you know.
There it is.
I was going to ask you another question later on, but I'll ask it now. Why do you think salespeople, or let's just discuss, we probably know the answer to this, sales, particularly here in the UK, so I don't know what the dichotomy is to the US, but selling doesn't have a great name, you know. Case in point, they invent so many weird and wonderful titles to disguise the word salesperson. What's your take on that, Victor?
Short answer, bad history. We used to screw people, right? We used to take advantage of them. The internet changed everything. Now I have access to the information. I can go validate things now. So do we deserve this sales revenue lashing that we're getting from the public still today? I think we still do. It's pure part of the repentance here. But I think sales is going to emerge out of all this is helping you clarify and guide you to make the right decision. And I think that's the transformation that has to happen. I think less and less we see cheesy salespeople, you know, slick Willie, so to speak, as we call them here. We see less and less of that. And so I think maybe another 100 years we'll be out of this hole.
Not long to go then. I love that, you know, talking about Zig Ziglar again, and I'm sure his name will come up again before this conversation's through, but he had a great maxim, didn't he? He said, sales or selling is something you do for somebody, not to somebody.
Yeah. And it's, you can detect, I mean, you pointed out that, you know, when you call that person, they go, yeah, like, what do you want? Yeah, what do you want? You can detect sincerity and authenticity. Sometimes I do videos, and what's interesting is that the video I mentioned, Sales Excellence, it was a 15-minute rant, like on sales, right? And the interesting thing was I didn't have anything else to post that week. And I was like, oh, and I recorded that, and I go, I don't know if I want to post this. I don't know if I like it, you know, but I just like, screw it, throw it up there. All the other stuff that I thought was like, yeah, this is high power stuff. People are going to love this.
Yeah.
Okay. This one just shot past. It's because I think there's an authentic tone to it. It's coming straight from the heart. As you say, heart and mouth are aligned, and it's going for it. And I think people are starved for that. Isn't it interesting though, Steve, that, you know, we try to learn all these sales tricks, right? All these sales tricks. And you ask people, how do you like to be sold to? And people say, I just want somebody to be straight up with me, direct, honest, even tell me things I don't want to hear. I said, then why don't you sell that way?
Yeah.
Why don't you sell that way? And it's because we're trying to be something we're not. And I think if salespeople go back to being who they are and sell the way they sell, use their style, their way of empathizing. I remember, I always use this phrase, Bruce Lee had this great line. He said, when it came to training, he said, absorb what is useful, discard what is not, and then add what is uniquely yours. It's beautiful. Absorb what's useful, discard what is not, and then add what is uniquely yours. And people in selling have to remember that. They don't have to sell like a Jordan Belfort. They don't have to sell like a Grant Cardone or a Zig Ziglar or a Jim Rohn. You don't have to do it. You do it your way.
Your way. Tell me, Grant Cardone, I'm a fan of his. He's a savage. I mean, he's unbelievable. Yeah. So you know him personally. You've hung out with him. You've shared the platform with him. What is Grant Cardone really like, Victor?
Oh my! We did it. The 10X was fun. You'll see the interview. You saw the interview on the. Yeah. Well, by the way, what's interesting about my presentation at 10X is that the teleprompter was let me see. The screen was showing one thing. The down monitor was showing another thing. And that, if you remember, I just said, screw it. I'm just going to use the board and kind of do the presentation myself. So it was an interesting experience. You know, people always ask me this question. I go, look, I got there, treated me, class act, gave me a beautiful gift watch, an expensive watch for participating, right? So I thought it was just beautiful. After that, we did a 3-day boot camp where I really got to hang out with him. And he is a beast. He is a savage. He's like, he knows what he wants. He knows how he wants to do it. That's his thing. But I got to see him when, when everybody was gone, so to speak. Only his people were there. And, he seemed like a genuine, nice person to me. I think there's the public grant and the private grant. And I'm not saying they're incongruent. But I think nobody ever sees that other side where, he's not that guy, like, hey, man, you need to sell everything you have and just invest in this. Not that guy. I don't know. I dig the guy, man. Like I said, I have my platform connected to his platform, our sales training platforms. And so we have a great business relationship.
Yeah. No, I mean, I totally take on board what you say. I think he is what he is. He's like a product of himself, and you just can't argue with that kind of success. You cannot argue.
I look at him. I look at a Gary Vaynerchuk. I look at a Jordan Belfort. You asked a question about our perception of sales, right? The problem is that these are the 3 most outspoken ones, right?
Yeah.
I'm just using these 3. It could be more, right? Just these 3. And when people see that all the time, they think, oh, that's how I need to do it to be successful. I'm like, no, they're using their style. The thing is, whether you talk to any of those 3, Belfort, Cardone, or Vaynerchuk, that's who they are. It's not a persona they invented. It's who they are. And I have to keep reminding people of that. Be yourself. Find your persona.
A lot of the time I've heard about, read about, and met people who are big earners in sales, hundreds and hundreds of thousands a year, million a year plus.
Yep.
And some of them, they are the antithesis of those guys you're talking about. If you looked at him, actually, you'd say he's the company's bookkeeper.
Yeah, I had one of those. Yeah. His name was, I can say his name because I'm very proud of it. His name was David Shoemaker. He wore like these he looked like the Where's Waldo character with the glasses, or the Harry Potter guy. Yeah. And he was the most soft-spoken salesperson and just killed his number every year. And I remember I asked his client, one of his clients, I said, I remember Dave walked out of the room. We were doing some product discussion. I said, can I ask a question? I said, what is it about David that you like as a salesperson? Because you're always making sure that I don't take him away from this account. Because they would always say, is David going to still be on the account? I'm like, yeah, David's still going to be on the account. That's when I was VP of sales for Latin America. I said, yeah, he's going to be on the account. He's not going anywhere. He said, okay, good. Let's talk. And I'm like, I said, why David? Just curiosity, because I keep hearing this. He goes, he comes visit us. He just walks us through the new products, doesn't try to sell us anything, asks us if we want to try something, understands our business, and he just presents. He just shares what he has. And he's very polite, very nice, and very courteous when he comes in. And you can tell when you're talking to him, he's being very forthright and honest. And that's why we like him. And I'm like, there it is. A different style of setting. Now, David was but he was very consistent, though. There's a little element there to it, right? Because consistent means you follow through on what you say you're going to do, and then you continue to go after the business. So he was very, very consistent.
Yeah. I know we got about 5 minutes left. A couple of things I want to cover. We'll have to call this part 1 and pick up again some other time, because I'm loving it. I could talk to you for about 3 hours. When I listen to you, you talk a lot in your seminars and in your podcasts about a thing called a value conversation. Just share with us what you mean specifically by that, Victor, please.
I referenced already the value conversation, that what's a value to the customer, right? What do they value? It isn't what you value. And this is kind of how we're taught. Here's why this product is important. Well, okay, that's great to know why it's important, but why is it important to the customer? Because that's the value I have to articulate. And so again, in a B2B sale, I say the value trinity that I use is increase revenue, reduce costs, expand market share, right? If you're B2C, you impact them with a different trinity. The consumer wants to know, how's this going to help me physically, psychologically, or financially? That's the trinity there. So I tie my product value to one of those, 1, 2, or all 3. And so when we have a value conversation, it's about that. But I want to highlight something. that this whole thing about relationship selling is antiquated in the sense that in today's market, clients want you to help them first. Prove to me that you can help me solve my problem, and as a result of that, love to have a relationship with you.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
I'll give you an example. We needed our roofing done. We had this guy come in, had almost zero personality, but here's what he did. We would say something, we're thinking about this. He goes, no, you don't want to do that because explanation, which we appreciate it. He says, but if you do want to invest a little more money, I would say, don't put it here. We can do this with just this material. Take that money and move it here, because by investing it here, and you're like, and this guy had no personality, zero. Like he just giving you facts, but you could tell that he was trying to help us. And I've come up with this. I think it's a good equation for the word trust, right? Because once you get somebody's trust, you're in, right? So here's my 1-2 combination of trust. I think it's a good definition. First, I need you to take my point of view. I need you to understand my pain. I need to know that you know and you feel my pain.
Yeah.
Point of view, empathy. Plus, 2, I need to know that you have my best interest in mind, that you're not trying to reach into my pocket. If I can show the customer, I get you, I understand you, I know what you want. I know you want a new roof. I got it. And you don't want to spend a lot of money, right? He's not reaching into my pocket. At that point, I want to listen to you. To me, that's trust. If I can convince you of those 2 things, then I'm in with you. I want to listen to you because I know you're not trying to take me for a ride, and you're going to give me what I need, and that's all you're going to do. Great
point. There's so much we could talk about, but just sort of in closing, because I know you got to be on another call in about 5 minutes. Have you got any upcoming new books? You were also in the reality TV series, which we've not even discussed. Any new film projects? Any new videos coming out? New events, virtual or otherwise? Victor, what's happening?
So I finished the book and I haven't released it yet. It's either going to be called Mastering the Upsell or Upselling is the New Prospecting. Which one do you like better? Upselling is the new prospecting. By the way, upselling is the new prospect means instead of going after new business, by going after existing business, by prospecting existing business, you can increase your sales up to 30%. Or the other one's called Mastering the Upsell.
I think the first one you talked about, because I'm big into that. I always say customer service is just an extension of selling, yeah? And if you listen to John Paul DeJoria, he talks about the same thing all the time. You want to be more in the rebuying business and the referral business than the new business. That's right. You know?
You want to be in the just upsell. So the book should be coming out. Hopefully I'm going to try to release it by the end of the year. It's already done. It's already been edited. It's fully done. And then we have new courses on the Sales Velocity Academy. So if folks are listening, go to salesvelocityacademy.com. We're always putting up some new courses, and that's all I have for right now in the bucket.
That's fantastic. And Sales Velocity Academy, how do people join that? They go to the website?
Go to the website. There's a monthly, annual, or lifetime access fee. Very reasonable. And I think we have like 53 courses with over 500 videos. Okay. So it's an extensive platform. Everything
you need. Victor, we must do a part 2. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a thrill, and I really mean that, yeah? To meet you and chat with you, and let's do another one soon, yeah?
Looking forward to it, my friend. Looking forward to it. I mean that.
Cheers, Victor. Me too.
Cheers.
All the very best.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.